Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Your Property Podcast. My name is Michelle Kearns from YPN, and today we've got Millie Bellotti with us. Hi, Millie. How's it going?
Hi, Michelle. I'm doing great.
Well, it's great to have you on, and let's just do a quick bio for people who don't know about you yet. So, Millie Bellotti is the founder of App Hosting Property. She's a social media for property investors expert, working with some of the biggest brands in the UK and worldwide, including our nation's favourite crisps, Walkers. In 2019, Millie left her role as head of social media to pursue property investing full-time, building a portfolio of buy-to-lets in the Northeast using the buy, refurbish, refinance method. Alongside growing her portfolio, she now helps property investors build their personal brands and strengthen their social media presence. And through working with Millie, her clients have raised millions in private finance, secured deals, generated leads, and enhanced their credibility in the property space. So, Millie, tell us about branding and your jump from the corporate world into property investing, working for yourself.
I feel like you fit in so much in that intro. That's amazing. As you've already said, I was the head of social media for an advertising agency in London. And I went to one of those free 2-hour property events where they teach you a little bit about what it's all about. And I was absolutely hooked. It was actually my partner who had dragged me there because he'd read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, done the whole traditional route. He was the one who was really into it. But I was the one at the end of the 2-hour talk who said, right, we need to do property. This is amazing. And so we immediately jumped in, did loads of, very expensive training, probably as much as my university degree cost, but it was worth it. At that point, we just said, okay, well, let's do some research. And we were looking into numbers. And obviously, I was living in London at the time. He was in the Navy, so he was all over, didn't really have a fixed base, but he was from the Northeast. And so when we did the research and we went home and we looked at numbers, London was not so great for the budget we had and for what the sort of strategy we were looking to do. But the Northeast was brilliant. So I actually quit that job in London and moved up to the Northeast. This was before COVID, before there was that whole thing that you could do any job anywhere. So there weren't jobs like that for, massive advertising agencies that exist in London did not exist. I couldn't have done that role here. So it was all or nothing. It was quit your job and do property or stay in London and do it. There wasn't this option. I think if I'd had the option now, I probably would have done something a bit less gung-ho and I would have continued and done it remotely and also done property on the side, but I didn't have that option. So I went full into property. Obviously,
burn your bridges.
Yeah, burn everywhere. Yeah, I actually did continue. They kept asking me for consultancy work for a while and I was like, no, I'm done now. I'm doing property. So I started doing, building the portfolio up in the Northeast. And my partner stayed in the Navy because, we did need one income. At that point, I joined social media just as, previous to that, I'd done social media for brands. So I didn't have a presence of my own. I was doing it for, Walker's Chris, for all these companies. I was doing strategies and campaigns for them and didn't have one of my own. So then I started my own, which was posting property. And I realized actually there were a lot of property investors online, which was great because it was great to make friends and make connections that way. But there were a lot of things I was seeing that I was like, oh, if you just did this, it would be better. If you just did that. And I started using a lot of the knowledge I'd had from doing it for big brands and sort of converting it into personal brands and thinking, well, okay, I'm not Walker's Chris. I'm not Royal Caribbean Cruises. I'm Millie Bellotti who's doing property. How can I use some of those learnings and make it into more of a personal brand than a big corporate brand? And then I started teaching other people how to do the same because that's what I love to do.
And how did you decide what your own brand was? You're starting from scratch.
Yeah, I guess I used a lot of what I knew. So in my last job, we had a team of people. So we had a team of designers, we had a team of copywriters, we had a team of people who spoke directly to the client. So you didn't ever have to do. Everyone had a specialized role. I then realized I'd have to do everything. So I went on Canva and on the free version of Canva and was like, how to choose my personal brand. And I just looked at loads of different colors and font and I just went with what feels right for me without spending too much time on it because I'm not a big brand. I don't have the resources and I don't need to do it that way. And I just picked out some things that I felt resonated and felt like they were me. But ultimately it wasn't about the brand of the business. It was about what am I doing in property, and it was really more to tell friends and families and acquaintances, hey, by the way, I do property and I need angel investment for my deal. So, I'm here. So it was really more about telling people of the journey. It was much less about branding as such and more about me.
Right. Okay. And so when you kind of were posting though, did you think, oh, I need a consistent structure, and were you kind of approaching it as a kind of methodical way where you were thinking, okay, Monday is motivation Monday, or one of the
Well, yeah, I mean, for my brands, we had like content calendars that,
yeah.
obviously had to be fed into by a lot of people. So the copywriter would write the copy, the designer would write the image, the client would have to approve it. So there were a lot of stakeholders involved. But I was like, okay, if I strip all of that back, content calendars are still a useful tool to like plan content in advance. So I created a content calendar for myself for the following 2 months, and I'd written out all the posts, I created them all, and I started staggering them. So yeah, I did have a structure because I was used to that. That was my background. But then after those 2 months, I did start to just be like, okay, well, I'll do some ad hoc stuff instead, because now that I'm into the flow of it. But I work with a lot of property investors, and some of them love the content calendar and are months ahead. The absolute record is one of my clients is 6 months ahead with her content calendar. I'm like absolutely staggered by that, because her brain just works that way, and she's just able to do that. And then because she's planned it all in advance, she can just relax and just continue. Of course, she's still engaging, she's still on the platforms every day, but she's created the content already. And then I've got other clients who just do it on the day. And I think it's about how your brain works, and it's not about trying to force something that's just not working for you. If that doesn't work for you, don't do it. Try something different.
Okay. And so obviously you then had kind of both things going on at the same time. So you're investing in property and getting started there. And at the same time, were you thinking, with your background and knowledge about social media, you're thinking, I need to start posting like today on day one, I'm in the seminar, let's get going? Or was it a case of doing a couple of deals and then going back retrospectively and posting about what you'd done in the past?
No, so I needed angel investment to start. Like, I didn't have any of my own money, so I didn't have the luxury of doing a few deals and then be like, okay, this is great. Now you can invest in me. Like, I literally had to do that from the beginning, and I've still not used any of my own money in property purchases. I've used angel investment, so I had to do it from the beginning. And there's a lot of people who say, like, when's the best time to start? Is it once you have your first deal? Is it before then? When is it? And the best time is now. Like, fine, if you haven't started yet and you're 10 deals down the line, brilliant, you can talk about those 10 deals. You've got a wealth of images, of videos, of information that you can share. But if you haven't, and I've worked with clients who literally don't have their first deal yet, and so like me, they are needing to put themselves out there in order to raise finance for that deal. And I think the client where I'm so in awe of her, because she's got the hardest slog, is she's based in Belgium, and she's investing in the UK. So she's having to do everything remotely. She has none of her own money, so she's having to use angel investment. Imagine how hard it is to get someone to invest in you when you're doing it remotely, and you have none of the content as well, of like viewings and all the things you'd have to do. So, and she has actually managed to raise angel finance that way. And I am so impressed, because it just shows that if she can do that, then anyone can.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really, that's really inspiring.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see lots of people all at different stages, but let's just dive into the bit about starting, because we get a lot of people obviously listening or watching this, and they are in that position where they want to leave the day job, and they haven't got their first deal yet, and they need angel investors to get started. So like a really common question is, what do I say? What content do I use if I don't have a deal? They feel like they haven't got any credibility, that imposter syndrome. Why would somebody invest with me if I haven't got a deal yet?
Yeah.
So how did you deal with that yourself?
Yeah, it's tough, but I think it's like, I mean, in a lot of the property training, they tell everyone what you're doing. So that's what I did from the beginning. Regardless of social media, I was doing that in real life. I was telling every single friend, and I had one friend who said, "I'll eat my sock if you do what if you do what you're saying you're going to do." He still has not eaten his sock. So yeah, you get a lot of people being like, "Yeah, whatever," but you also get a lot of people saying, "Oh, that's really interesting. Wait, how did you get into that?" And they ask you a load of questions. So think about those people, imagine those people, and that's who you're speaking speaking to on social media. It's the people who are interested, who are like, wait, how did this work? How did you first understand what this even was? And how are you going about buying your first deal? It's answering those like frequently asked questions in a way. That would be your content. So it's like, oh, actually, I'm going on 10 viewings this weekend. Oh, actually, I'm completing this training, which is teaching me about this strategy. So there's loads of stuff surrounding property that's not just once you've got the keys. The keys is like such a minor part of the actual property journey, isn't it? Like it was my 61st offer that got accepted. I put on 61 offers, all rejected. There's a load of content in how many properties I had to view to get to that one that was accepted, in all of the estate agents who put the phone down on me. There's a lot to be said about that sort of stuff. And at the beginning, you feel a bit awkward about that stuff because it makes you think, it makes me look bad if I haven't. But actually, that's gold. And you only realize that really after the time. But if you listen to someone like me say that, then hopefully it makes you think, actually, no, that is good content, because people don't just need to see the plain sailing. They need to see the, every part of the business, even the really, really tricky times at the beginning.
Yeah, it's people think, oh, that's the boring bits, but actually they're the interesting bits because it shows the journey, it shows the perseverance and the commitment behind it. And if you're working with angel investors, then the first thing people will do, of course, is just Google you and say, look on the social media platforms. And if they can see that you've got, 3-6 months or a year worth of of presence and showing what you're doing, and you're sticking at it, you've got a plan, exactly what you're looking for, then like that, it has huge value, right? So it's that transparency of people being able to see what you're doing.
And not pretending, right? Not saying, oh, I'm this really experienced property investor who's been doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, watch me from the beginning, from zero, watch me do like starting from a job that's got nothing to do with it, learn everything about property and put myself into it. I think that's really heartwarming to see. And any angel investors looking at that thinking, okay, well, you're really dedicating everything to this. I can see that you're really trying. That's much more, interesting to them than someone who's saying, oh yeah, I'm really experienced in property, but there's no proof that they are, and you can sense that there's something wrong and there's something off there.
Yeah. Tell us about your first deal then with angel investors. So did it come through social media? Was it through friends and family?
It was through friends and family, but it was the social media. They saw that I was posting about it on social media. I mean, a lot of things happen that way, where you think, oh yeah, well that money came from friends and family, but actually a lot of the time it is related to social media, because you can tell people till the cows come home what you're doing, and you should, but until they actually visually see it, it's really hard for them to imagine. And there are, of course, people who aren't going to invest until they see that first deal done and completed and whatever. I've had people who've invested only after that point. But that first one, they were close friends and family. So they trusted me already. They knew that I had put a lot of my own money and I'd moved up north. That was a big sign of commitment to be like, right, I'm doing this properly. And so they gave me that break for that first one. But then once I had that first one, I was able to use that for the future ones.
Yeah. And did you borrow the whole amount for the deal, or was it just the deposit money, or presumably there's like a build cost as well?
Yeah, it was a really low purchase cost. It was 39,950.
Wow.
It was insane. Obviously that is the Northeast, and it has obviously gone up massively in value since then, because there was they'd had the sale fall through, and they were about to get repossessed, so they needed that sale. Nice. And I was able to say I will complete within 30 days, and I did, and that saved them from being repossessed. So that's why I got a good deal. And it needed a refurb. So they did cover the whole purchase price and the refurb, which was 15 grand. So it wasn't such a huge sum that they couldn't finance the whole thing. But the second one I then did, from then on, I did more bridging than full cash purchases, because I realized I could leverage more money doing bridging.
Yeah. And were you able to, so then I guess did you flip it on and sell it, or did you keep it? And
typically houses that are worth 40 grand in the Northeast aren't brilliant for flipping, but the BRRR. So I then put it on a mortgage. So it's now worth 75 grand. So still not a huge value property, but it rents really well. So the cash flow on that used to be £400 a month once everything was cleared. And now it's a bit less because the interest rate has gone up slightly. Yeah. Still a really good cash flowing asset.
But I think it's really important to, for some people who might think, oh, okay, well, it's a lot of work or whatever for £400 or £300 a month, but it's not about that. It's about the the proof of concept yourself to other people that you've got that commitment there. You can do it. If you can do it on this type of house, okay, what's stopping you just adding a 0 on the end and doing it on a bigger house? And it just gives you that momentum, doesn't it? Keep on going, and suddenly it's all real. Do you remember what it was like when you kind of got that refinance through and it's like, wow, I did this?
Yeah, it's weird. People talk about you should celebrate every moment, and it's so true that you should, because I feel like by the time the refinance money is in, you're so not interested anymore by that point. It feels much more exciting actually when the value has been and has sent you the report. But then it's like months later that you actually get the refinance money in, and you're already on your second and third deal by then. So it's not that exciting. So you should celebrate all the small wins, like the offer came in and it was what you asked for. The new tenants moved in. The refurb is finished. Like all of those small milestones, rather than just thinking about the big one, which is the refinance, because actually that one is so uninteresting by the time it comes that you actually don't want to celebrate it.
Yeah, it's more of a relief than anything that's come through. But you're right. The journey, and just you have to appreciate and enjoy the process. It's not just about kind of reaching that end goal, because you're spending most of your time in that process. All your time is in that, finding the deals and doing the work and negotiating. So yeah, you need to be able to enjoy the process as well as the results. Yeah.
Mm.
So, and did you decide that, okay, on that point, this is the strategy for me, I'm just going to stick with this kind of cookie cutter approach going forward, or have you gone into other strategies?
Yeah, I stuck with BRR because it works so well in the Northeast. And I've been pulling out most of my money on all of the deals. One was, and then some, sort of a Mimo and then some. So it does just work so well here. And I've thought about other strategies, and I actually have done an essay. My last project was a serviced accommodation, but actually I'm going back to BRR because it's a nightmare. Because BRR is so much easier. I feel like I've got like a really good thing going there. With the essay, I don't want to manage it. I do not want to receive calls saying, "How do you turn on this TV?" That is so not me. I would get so frustrated. I'm not enough of a people person for idiots. So there's been quite a few issues. Like at the moment with my service accommodation, one of the guests yanked the tap so hard that it snapped at the back. Didn't mention it, left the property. The next day we go in and the ceiling in the kitchen has fallen through, because there was a leak overnight, caused the whole thing to. And now the property is going to have to be shut for about a month while they fix that and then plaster it and all of that. And so bookings are going to have to be cancelled, all of that. So that's not something that would happen in a buy-to-let. Because again, if that happens with a guest, they're not a guest, a tenant, they would tell you immediately, and you would get it sorted, and they wouldn't have to move out for something like that, So I do find that this essay experience has made me very thankful for my lovely little BRRR grunters, that really great tenants that stay in for years and years, families, and just brilliant people. And I'm so grateful for all my tenants. And I'm going to definitely continue with that strategy. Yeah.
Great. And is it a case of you've got a strategy where the figures work in a certain area, like a goldmine area, or are you always kind of looking to go bigger and bigger and get different types of properties, or using the same model, but I guess higher value purchases?
I mean, they are higher value purchases than that first one, definitely. But there's a certain point at which buy-to-lets don't work, right? You don't want to do a buy-to-let on a 200 grand house, or at least not in the Northeast, because you wouldn't make it back in rent. So it's always about that, rent versus value. So when you get your remortgage and you've got that mortgage amount coming out, does it make sense with the rent that you're getting? And in the Northeast, there are loads of areas where that works. But so it's not one specific area I'm in, I'm spread, but yeah, it needs to make sense for the numbers. So it's all well and good saying, oh yeah, I want a nice big house that's, really fancy and expensive, and then I'll get better tenants. A, that's not necessarily true that you'd get better tenants, and B, it might not cash flow. It might actually negatively cash flow if you do that.
Yeah, true. And working with investors then, how is that? Because it's a couple of years now, you've more established, you've got that consistency of having those deals to share. So do you find that you're attracting different types of investors now, or are you asking for different types of investors?
I actually have a waiting list at the moment, because I'm not doing that many deals, that many active deals. So I started in 2019, moved up to the Northeast in 2019, started doing it. In 2021, I was actually in a car accident with my partner, and I broke 12 ribs, ruptured my spleen, deflated my lungs, broke my pelvis, lots of stitches. It was a really, really big accident. But the worst thing that could have happened to me was that my partner actually died in that car accident. So, it still feels like that was yesterday, to be honest, and we're still recovering. Everyone, his family, my family, all of my friends, all of his friends. We had done this thing together. I'd moved up to the Northeast for him, and we were building the business together. And it was a really exciting thing that we were working towards. It was getting him out of the Navy and building our life together. And since he died, I've definitely lost some of that drive to do property, to be honest, because you really need a good goal, don't you? And the goal before was so motivating. We were on a roll. When he died, I really put the brakes on property because I need to still reevaluate where I want my life to go, sort of thing. So, and I also couldn't drive or move for a long time. So I put a pause on property. I have done a few since then, but property hasn't been the biggest focus for me. I've got to say the biggest focus has been the social media business, because I can do that from anywhere. It actually, in the moments where after the accident I was thinking of throwing everything in, it was the community that I'd built on social media who really gave me that sort of feeling of togetherness and made me want to stay in it. I was actually very close to just actually not doing it anymore. But they were the ones who sort of inspired me to keep going. And so I do still want to go on with property, but it's less of a focus. And at the moment, I'm just carrying on with my social media clients, and also, obviously maintaining that portfolio and slowly continuing to grow it. But until I have my new sort of goal, it's not been the biggest priority for me, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. And I guess, did you find that having the portfolio in the background it meant that, there was still income coming in, even though you weren't able to physically go out and work? You were able to just still pay your own bills, and kind of it freed you up to actually focus on more of a passion project and working with your clients. So I suppose it served that purpose in this scenario.
Well, actually, I've still never taken an income from the property side, because at the beginning, you're always reinvesting everything that comes in, and you're putting it.
Yeah.
And I still haven't actually wanted to take any money out of it. I can do, but I don't really want to yet. And I don't need to, because I make my income through the social media side. And yes, obviously, I did take a break after the accident. I had 6 months off, but I was covered in that period, so I was fine. And since then, I've just lived off the social media side, because I want to keep reinvesting those property funds. I guess one day I will have to start being like, okay, I'm going to start taking an income from this. But until I do, why pay taxes when you don't need to?
Yeah, or not. It's just, I guess, a safety net, isn't it? Like a cash buffer, that if you need it for the properties, so you can reallocate that money to improving them over the long term. So it's a nice position to be in. So, and with your clients then, so who do you typically attract? Is it people who are just starting out with no funds? I guess it's a catch-22, isn't it? Because they want to know how to do this themselves, but if they are in the position where they don't have the funds to invest in property, it's like, well, how much time and effort and money do I spend in setting up my brand and getting coached through doing this? But then if they don't get their name out there and they haven't got that presence, then they're not going to get the investors. So,
I mean, I've worked with all sorts. I've worked with people who are 10 years in the business, have multi-million-pound portfolios, and what they want to do is potentially now they're selling courses or mentorship, or want speaking opportunities. They're basically trying to build their brand and their business. So I've worked with people like that. But then I also, as you say, work with people who are completely starting from scratch. I work with people who've had social media presences for 7 years, and actually, from the face of it, look like they're doing really well. They've got thousands of followers and it looks really great, but they've actually never made a sale from it, never actually got any good results from it. And then I work with people who have literally 0 followers, who've never used it before, who are like, I don't even know how to post. So it is a bit of a wide spectrum there. But in terms of, as we've talked about, the best time is now, no matter what. And the people who haven't started yet, they tend to be people who then do the program. They tend to be people who know that investing in yourself is the best way to get success. Just like, when I did my property training, I knew that I couldn't just go into it with zero knowledge, because I would have made so many more mistakes. I mean, I still made many, because everyone does, and you learn from making them. But I did definitely shortcut a lot of things that, and I was such a 9 to 5. I had no idea about entrepreneurship and property and all of these things. It's actually a big mindset shift they gave me, as well as anything else. So yeah, the people who tend to be investing in themselves now, even without a property or anything, I then know that they're really serious about growing it. And then there's even more of an incentive on them to actually do something with it and use their social media, not just do the program and then not do anything with it, because they know that they've invested that money and that money needs to come back to them some way, whether it's through property or
Okay, last question then. So you mentioned about people who've got lots of followers, but they don't necessarily monetize that, or they don't use that. What is the key to turning followers into investors and actually getting people to to realize that actually you are looking for investors? Because there's one thing just posting about what you're doing, there's another thing that actually I am looking for investors, come and work with me.
Well, I think the ones that had, thousands of followers and weren't necessarily getting results, weren't necessarily looking for investors at that point. They were actually more looking to grow their brand or grow their business. In terms of how you turn your followers into like angel investors, that is all about personal branding. So a lot of people make the mistake of, they set up an Instagram, a whole new Instagram, they use their limited company name, they use their logo, and then they just post very sort of generic posts that they see other people posting on social media. And the biggest mistake there is that actually, first of all, you completely bypass your own personal one that has maybe 300, 400 friends and family and acquaintances and people who already know, like, and trust you. And you've gone to create a new one. Why should they then go follow that new one? They're over here. Why are you sending them over there? And it's not, the biggest mistake as people make is not going for the lowest hanging fruit. The lowest hanging fruit is people who already know you in some capacity, and all you have to do is sort of convert them by showing them what you're doing in property, by showing your personal brand, by being you, because they already know you. So you don't need to go all corporate and only speak about property. You need to integrate your life and what you're like as a human being and your values. Those are the things that are inspiring to them and that will convert them, not, the business name that you think is so important when you're setting up a limited company. My God, how much do we over egg like the importance of a limited company name, when really that's just a purchase vehicle, right? It shouldn't be your name on social media by any means. And yeah, I think that's the biggest mistake. It's just not thinking about, right, I am a human being. I should be speaking like a human being in order to convert these people. Like, how would you speak to them at a barbecue? Like, think about that when you're doing your social media.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. And so what's next for you then, and where can people find out about working with you and what you're up to?
I am a big believer in do one thing, do it well. So I have from the beginning, just with the social media thing, I do the social media program. It's an 8-week or 8-session program going through basically everything in social media strategy, how to create good images, reels, how to write well, how to systematize and process your business, your social media. So it covers everything. And so that's where I'll just be continuing doing that one-to-one with my clients, because I know it works and I get a tremendous sense of accomplishment seeing my clients succeed on social media. So I'm going to continue doing that. But I am actually on the panel at the Property and Entrepreneur Summit, which is happening this Sunday. I think the podcast will come out after that, but I'm still very excited about that. And you can find me on at Posting Property on Instagram. Just send me a DM and we can have a little chat.
Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting and really inspiring to hear your story. So if anyone wants to connect with Millie, then as she just said, they will put the links to all of those contacts in the show notes. So do connect with her there and find out more. So thanks, Millie. And thanks everyone for listening and watching today. If you're not yet a member of the YPN membership, then click the link in the show notes for your free 30-day trial. And we'll see you next time, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.